Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
What up? What up, though?
Hey, PK.
Oh, let me fix my. There you go.
Oh,
What's
you
up?
got a little pendant.
Yeah, representing for today's big topic. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes. I was trying to find me a green shirt, but I didn't find one that I wanted to put on, but I was
That right?
definitely wanted to be in the mood, in the festive mood of the
Oh, I love
show.
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Shout out to our show producer. I love the music.
Yes. I got
I got
5
DJ too.
on
Yeah,
it.
I got 5 on it. I mean, it's just everything is right on time with this. Welcome to That Part Podcast 305. Remember, you can watch us on our new website at thatpartpodcast305.com. My name is Papa Keith from Just Vote, period. And my amazing and beautiful co-host is the one and only Janae Tate from High Low News. And we
Thank
have
you.
combined to bring you That Part Podcast 305 to keep y'all informed, mostly our millennials. What we like to say, we meeting y'all where you at. We talking
Yeah.
your language. We breaking it down, and we bringing people who's gonna break it down for you. So the first thing we like for you to do is please invite someone to join us. All right. So each one teach one. Everyone who's in here, please share this with someone. Share with your Facebook. Share with your groups, and get them involved. And we'll appreciate that so much. The more you share is the more you care.
No, definitely. And that's how we're able to keep continue growing the show and making sure that we're reaching more people and we're able to continue to do this. So we just appreciate you guys for liking and sharing and letting people know when we're on live. All of those things matter.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. Well, you look nice.
Oh, you think so? I'm like, really? If you saw what I was doing before this or what I had on before this, definitely just I threw on my this is one of my favorite shirts, my Samuel Jackson
Oh,
as,
nice,
as
nice.
Nick Fury shirt to all my Marvel fans out there. It's one of my favorite shirts.
That's what's up. All right. Well, I love it. You like it. I love it. Um,
Thank you.
Before we start on our topic today and bring on our guests and stuff like that, we gotta touch on that boring ass vice presidential debate that happened last night. I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't, acknowledge it at least.
We
Man,
can we could acknowledge it, but I didn't watch it. I had it on in the background. But I put a post on Facebook and I said, old white men in politics are out of style. Like, I wanted to watch it, but something about it I just couldn't relate to. Like, there was something that I was
oh,
like, I don't think I'm the target demo for these people. And it just seems like I hate to say this, but I'm like, if it was like some younger people or people of color, I think I would have been more interested in what they had to
engaged.
say.
Yeah.
I just did not care about seeing them. And I know
Yeah.
JD Vance is younger, but he still gave me old white man tease. So
Yeah, like I wasn't feeling it, and then I hated when they started like, I like what you said about like, this is war, okay? Like all this patronizing shit. Come on, man, we ain't for that. I want war. But just some key things real quick before we move on. Um, he did give JD a chance to say, "Do you believe Trump?" You know, won the election or the election was stolen from Trump, and that man skated way around. Like he he went from New York to Cuba. He went past all those states and went down. Like
I've
I
been
mean,
watching highlights, and what
yeah,
he said, it was kind of like he was like it was a peaceful transition. I was like, were we watching the same
right.
insurrection, sir?
Highlight that, and also Tim got caught on some goofy stuff about him in China when I guess he was living there and
Oh, for
some
real?
lining up and he started fumbling the ball. So, it is what it is, man. But we just want to acknowledge that there was a vice presidential debate that happened last night. If you didn't miss it, if you missed it, excuse me, like Janae missed it, you didn't miss much.
Yeah, I watched the highlights.
I'm no smarter
I
today than I was yesterday.
Yeah, I'll watch some people who like I like Roland Martin's take on like the presidential debate. So I'll see what he had to say. And I watched actually Stephen Colbert, his show came on because it was on CBS. So we just had the TV on and I liked his recap of it. So I kind of like got a gist of what was said, but I'm gonna dig into it. I feel like I'm not gonna watch an hour and a half, almost 2 hours of
You're not.
that.
I
Yeah,
promise you're not.
and
All right.
but here's the thing though, and as much as people don't like Trump and they feel like, wherever you fall on the aisle, he's entertaining. So at the end of the day,
Right.
like
That
after
factor.
seeing his debates and then going to that, it's like I didn't have the comedic factor in
Right,
there that
right.
Trump brings to a presidential debate. So I will say that like he makes them entertaining because he's going to say
I
something
know.
crazy and something funny, even though it may be like harmful to people. But I'm like, sometimes it's so outrageous and just over the top that you just can't help but laugh. And we work in media, like those type of things are entertaining. And
Of
I think
course
he
they
gets
are.
that from being somebody in media.
Yeah, I was almost watching. To your point, I was almost watching last night's debate. Like, oh, y'all being serious? Okay.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well, y'all trying to have an amicable conversation? That's what we doing.
Exactly. That's exactly what
I
it
don't
was
know how to take
given.
this, but okay.
And,
Oh my
and look,
god.
friend, everybody's who's watching live, like we are live, when we decided to do as many shows like this as possible.
Yeah.
So I will be remiss if I didn't tell my friend that the mic on my end doesn't sound as good. So I need our producer Derica to give us a heads up if
Oh,
in the
good.
chat
Yeah.
if PK is good, because I wouldn't want us to go through the whole interview with our guests and PK's mic is off.
Yeah. No. You sound good. You sound good.
Okay,
On
so for me,
that.
I know sometimes my audio is off. But Derica, I don't know if PK good for you.
Let us know
Okay,
in,
so
in
it
our
could just be
second
me.
chat. So shout out to Fire Foods tapping in. If y'all tapping in, just let us know you here by just making some noise, fire emojis or whatever in the comment section so we can recognize our fans, friends, and family who's in the room. We appreciate that a lot. And JT, you gonna get this party started.
Okay. Well, we have a very interesting show, and I'm excited about this show because we get to break down something that I think that Florida has been like on the ballot for years and things that people have wanted to get passed. And so we're going to be talking about as you look at Papa Keith's pen, weed and legalizing it in Florida. And we have some guests here that's going to break down what that means, why you should vote for it or not vote for it. But just we're not here to sway you on what side to be on. We're
Right.
just here to tell you that hey, this is the information. This is what you should go into with the booth before you make your decision. And so yeah, without further ado, I would love to welcome to the show our two guests, our esteemed guest who's going to break all this stuff down for us, Senator Dwight Bullard and Eric Stevens. Hey.
Hey,
Y'all head so the people can see y'all.
that's what's up. Welcome.
Hey, happy to be on the show. Good to be amongst friends.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. So before we get the party started, I just want to recognize some people that just tapped in. Shout out to Suzanne McDowell.
Oh, what's up, Suzanne? Hey, girl.
I Braid in the building.
What's up, Lex?
Kate in the building. You know.
Hey, mommy. And DJ Fire Poosh. Foosh. That's it, right?
Yes. My
Hey,
brother.
y'all.
All right, so let's get this party started. Of course, let's start with Eric since he's our guest. Senator Dwight Bullard's more of a regular here.
At this point, he's the third co-host or the fourth co-host because the comments is the third co-host.
Yes, exactly. So we have Eric Stevens from Florida for Care and Yes on 3. Eric, could you just please give a little bit of background on yourself so people can understand who you are and what you're doing and why we happily have you on the show for this special edition Amendment 3 discussion.
Sure. So I've lived down here in Miami my whole adult life. I worked both in 2014 and 16 on the medical amendments, which were number 2. But you need 60%. We got 58 the first time. We got 71 the second time. And I think there's a lot of things that went right and wrong post passage. And so I think that's a lot of the reason that, I've still continued to be involved on the medical side. And now, having done this twice and understanding that people shouldn't be going to jail for this, and still really having no option for tourists to access this, or short-term visitors that are still getting contaminated products, I think this is something that we need to have here.
That's what's up. All right, but give us a little bit of background on yourself. Let us know where you went to school, and and tell us a little bit about Florida for care.
Prior to that, I lived in Massachusetts. I saw them change some of their laws in 2008, 2009. I went to the University of Miami here. I actually got a small endowment my June. This year, finally. Oh man, it's been a rough road. Yeah, it's nice to admit that now. It's been, but so yeah, especially this time of year anyway. But I actually got a small grant my one of the summers of my junior year there. I did a little work in Massachusetts. I studied this kind of across the country, what was happening, and thought we need to figure out some way to bring this here, but we had a very difficult ballot process that's gotten even more difficult. It also doesn't allow you to put as much detail in as you'd like. We've had a number of amendments thrown out after collecting, hundreds of thousands of signatures. So there's a variety of differences here, but I'm happy to kind of delve into all of that. But that's I had a sick aunt that was helped, that kind of brought me to this topic and subject, and it's kind of continued from there. Happy to delve into anything from there.
Well, I can tell you this much. Can y'all hear my mic? Is my mic good? Can y'all hear my mic?
I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. I'll tell you this much, Stephen, you're very passionate, because even when I ask you to talk about yourself, you find a way to talk about Amendment 3. I'm like, so what was it like when you were a kid? Well, when I was 3.
I didn't know you wanted me to go back that far.
No, I'm just saying, I'm trying to give you a chance to big yourself up or talk about yourself, or you just so when I found Amendment 3 and the weed
prior to that, when I was at UM and even in Massachusetts, I grew up in Foxborough, Mass, so we don't have much there besides a football stadium. So I worked a little bit with the Patriots, but thankfully we were pretty good then. So went to UM, thought I did a little work with them too, thought I'd continue the winning tradition. That didn't necessarily continue. But I had a great time, met a lot of great people, ended up eventually after graduation, I actually worked on some local decriminalization issues on this in Miami Beach and Dade. And, the idea at that point, when we didn't have any funding or an amendment, was to get some support behind getting some sort of change legislatively at the state level. And around that time, there was a political consultant in Miami Beach that was interested in this issue after putting it in a poll after he had finished a prior election, and someone told him, hey, John Morgan's very supportive of this. He has a sick brother and father who were really helped. And so after I kind of read a little bit more about that and found out that was happening, I kind of hounded him to be like, look, let me help you work on this here. I've been trying to figure out how to get this done, and I have more of the I guess there wasn't much of an industry connections. I had more of the reform and drug policy expert related, examples in states and people that I could help connect with as far as that goes, where he knew a lot of the political landscape here.
All right, so y'all made magic together.
Yeah. And well, we lost the first time, but the next day John said he was going to do it again. So, and understanding kind of by that point, I went to business school. I didn't go to political science. I didn't really do any of that. I wish I had in some ways. Understanding the turnout in a presidential year versus a gubernatorial year, which is what we had put it in the first time. It's very different. So.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's great, man, and thank you so much for sharing that. And we'll dive into some questions that Janae has lined up. Senator Dwight Bullard.
Hey, what's going on?
My brother, Florida Rising. Appreciate you taking the time, of course, to weigh in on this. For those who don't know, just a little bit of history on yourself too, Senator.
Yeah. I mean, the reason I dropped the day job on this one is that, in full transparency, Florida Rising's endorsed Amendment 3 as an organization, as an entity. So I don't want people to think, I don't have opinions on it. I know, work with that part and just vote, period. But this is kind of a tradition for me because the first person to introduce a marijuana legalization bill in Florida happened to be my mom when she was in the Senate.
Wow.
And so she did it when she was a senator. I did it again when I was a senator as well, because this issue is important.
Was that the Kathy Jordan?
No, this is
or prior.
This was she introduced that back in 2010 or 2011.
Oh wow.
Was when she introduced her bill, and then I introduced it again in 2014. Really just straightforward, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the difference between medicinal and recreational. But this has been, and just given the historical context, people have been vilifying weed and marijuana for quite some time now, but there's always a racial undertone that's been attached to it. So understanding that history, it was important for us as Black legislators to jump in there and make sure we, reshape the narrative, because what a lot of people don't fully appreciate is that marijuana wasn't illegal until the 1930s. That's when the federal government decided to intervene, and they decided to intervene for a very problematic reason. We can talk about that later. But just so people know, Thomas Jefferson and George Washington both grew hemp and or cannabis on their plantation. Really? So this ain't nothing new,
right?
To the American story. We can definitely chop up about that.
That part.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Come on now. I'll put the trees in the chat. I see the trees are glowing. So you have some fans in the chat. I'm gonna kick it off with our first question, and you guys can both answer it, and I'll kick it to you first, Senator. What are the key differences between this amendment and previous attempts at cannabis legalization in Florida?
Yeah, I mean, Eric kind of alluded to it. So back in 2014, we attempted a statewide ballot initiative around medicinal marijuana. It fell short. 2 years later, revamped it again, brought it back. And so Florida, since 2016, has had legal medicinal marijuana. But the challenge there is that, of course, it's prescribed. You have to have a card in order to acquire it. And it doesn't really get into, I guess, the more general usage or utility of marijuana. For a lot of folks, especially when we think about it in the modern context, people don't think about it as a prescribed drug, don't think about it in terms of its kind of fully functional medicinal usage. People will use it to, help with, suppression of eating. People will use it to deal with things around like social anxiety. People will use it for a number of different reasons, non-prescriptive. And so it's important to have some sort of either decriminalization or recreational component so that people don't feel a sense of restriction. Not to mention the other piece and we can debate that on whether or not that is relevant or applicable. But in the state of Florida, if you do have a medicinal card, you also can't own a gun. And so, Florida and guns have a very long storied history. But under the current conditions, if you're a card carrying medicinal marijuana user, you then can't be a licensed gun owner. And that has always been something that's tripped folks up.
Cool. I want to follow up on that because I'm both. There is a trick, right? Because if you get your gun license first,
right,
then you can get that. I think if you do it the other way around, so I had my gun license first, and then I got my medical card after. Okay, so I just wanted to touch on that.
No problem. Appreciate that clarity, PK. If you got the card before you got the license, you're not able to get the license.
Right. And then just so for more clarity, if you got your gun license first, then got your card, they're not going to take away your gun license. Just for more clarity, because I think a lot of it too, Janae, is just lack of information, and people knowing puts them in a funk and have them fear. And that's why we have a lot of like returning citizens who are scared to vote or even check, just based on fear. So a lot of what we're trying to do is debunk a lot of these fears and have these conversations so that people can at least do the research. You know what I'm saying? And we're not saying take whatever we say on these podcasts to the bank, but let it be a start of something, and then you take it from there and do some additional research, and and get where you need to go.
Yeah. And Eric, I want to give you a chance to, if anything you wanted to weigh in on that question about like the different reiterations of this, like what's the difference between this amendment and previous attempts at legalizing marijuana in Florida?
So, yeah, I mean, I think a couple things. The prior amendments, clearly were for medical conditions, debilitating conditions. They definitely were not for all adults, 21 plus. They wouldn't have removed any of the criminal penalties. There were actually, as I somewhat alluded to earlier, there were other initiatives that were filed for this basic similar topic. Some of them were too many pages in length. Some of them weren't clear that you weren't not legalizing or changing federal law, which kind of alludes to the second part of your question, which is the gun question, which has more of the federal differences and ties, right? And Senator Bullard, maybe you've looked into the firearm issue more so on this, but I don't know that this issue passing at the state level would change anything as it relates to that form and what you would fill out and how you would have to answer that, having a card or not. I believe you would still be in a similar predicament until the federal law changes. But that was a good point, I believe, that you sort of alluded to on that. And then to your first point, and thank you for you and all your family's work in Tallahassee on this issue and many others. But yeah, this has been a huge issue that I, in my studies noticed was mostly disproportionately affecting young people and, minority communities of color, and areas that people wanted to go in, have a reason to search a vehicle, have a reason to look for other problems. I think that may be something that can be solved with this as well. I think there's parts, as much as we may want to go into it, with constitutional amendments that citizens put on the ballot, they need to pass a single subject constitutional court process, essentially. And that's where they may or may not contain an entirety of all the specific details that you want. And so I think some of the things that we'll probably talk about may or may not be specifically listed, and that's not necessarily because they wanted or not wanted to. I mean, one of the judges, even for this amendment, said, well, really, sales should be one petition and the decriminalization should be a whole nother one. So like that, like to that level of understanding how split they may want to get, depending on, if you mention too many things. The other thing that also has changed since when we put it on the ballot, we collected probably 100,000 signatures. We're able to wait for a Supreme Court review. They're not even giving a Supreme Court review. They had to collect almost 1 million signatures before they even got their review. And they put a variety of other hurdles in place to basically make it extremely difficult for citizens to signature petitions. Like 2 of the amendments you'll vote for this year weren't put on by this. They were put on by the legislature. It would have been nice if they had, put this issue to the voters a couple of years ago. I apologize. Yeah, but that's kind of the differences here, and where there may or may not be some aspects there. There are lines that give the legislature the power to license additional entities, or to take, to do whatever they feel the need to regulate this legally. So I think there's things like that sort of fall into this. But when things may get too detailed, that's been somewhat of the fear, I think, especially when you're going to have no notice and have to have put up all kinds of money. I mean, and even the numbers you see for, like, let's say the money that one side is raised versus the other. I mean, 80, maybe 90% of what was raised was already spent just on collecting signatures. I mean, that all isn't just sitting there waiting to be spent on, ads and different things. Like, most of that's already gone. And had they got one thing wrong in the language, it would have been all for literally nothing.
Yeah.
Not even a chance. So that's it's a hard line. Like, we weren't able to put home grow as it related to medical in our amendment, and we really wanted to. There were a lot of people that were upset it wasn't there. We thought it was going to create this multi-subjected issue, and we weren't going to get on. And we were advised by,
touch on that.
But it doesn't ban. But it doesn't say you can't. That's the thing. So actually, the governor's,
according to some of the advertisements that I've been seeing.
Well, read them though, because I couldn't even pause it quick enough to read it, which it was pretty funny. I couldn't pause it quick enough to read the line because the words say it says it in the amendment, but the text they put on the screen actually says, as argued by Attorney General Moody in the Supreme Court hearings. And I actually believe today there was a lawsuit filed by the committee, and I probably should know this by now, because of the deceptivity of that. And I can try and add that in the chat if I can find it here. But there's things like that where you can say something, but it doesn't actually say you can't. And it doesn't really, someone may have mentioned that, or there was an article or a headline, and now you're stating that as fact. And that is pretty deceptive. So, and to that point, the governor actually, one of his things in the press conference was, well, it doesn't have, this home grow thing. We should be able to have that. And it's like, phenomenal. Let's get it passed. And hopefully you're going to sign that bill. It sounds like, so we've got a great starting point. Yeah. I mean, that was the reason he said it wasn't good. So, I don't know. There's interesting discussions that have been created.
I think, and I want to stress Eric's point, is that Amendment 3 and Amendment 4 are the only ones that were put on by petition. The guidelines for that are not only do you have to follow what is called a single subject rule, meaning that you can't tackle multiple subjects. And the courts are very fickle about what that means. So so for an amendment like this, you couldn't on one hand talk about the recreational use and distribution in the same amendment. Otherwise, it would have violated the single subject rule, right? And you also have a word cap in terms of how many words that can appear on the ballot for citizen-run ballot initiatives. The other 4 ballot initiatives that were put on the legislature by the legislature don't have those restrictions. So I just want to remind folks why 3 and 4 are different fundamentally than 1, 2, 5, and 6.
So those are really good points. And the last one I forgot, you also need to make that summary, which is the part that voters actually see, reflect the entirety of what you put in there, within a small word count, right? So like to be able to do all of those things and them not to say, oh, well, the voter wasn't clear. And there've been litigation against some of these things, even after the fact, I believe. I can't think of them offhand. But those are a lot of the reasons I think there's nothing that says you cannot. And I haven't seen any reason for medical or this to not allow it other than a bill has not moved through committee. There's nothing that constitutionally bans that fact.
I think it's interesting, and I think people are, what they should take away from this is for something to be put on the ballot, like by petition of the people, that's not by the legislator. It's a lot of red tape. It's a lot of legalese that restricts it from getting to the ballot. So once it's there, that's why it's so critical that you do your research and you know what it is, especially if you're for something like this, because it may take a lot more time and resources, or it may not be able to get on the ballot, for a long time because of the process that the state of Florida has in place for it. And I'm correct in saying that, right, Senator Bullard and Eric?
Yeah.
So, Janae, you want to go to the next question?
Okay, yeah. Do you have your questions up, friend?
I don't, but I have my own in my head, so I'm like,
yeah. And the last thing I'll add briefly on that is the legislature's also had a bill to potentially change citizen petition vote threshold to 67% every year. They haven't voted it through, but that's just the next step of trying to not have any questions or power there.
Yeah, they keep trying to add. Eric's nail on the head. Every year they try to, and it's a weird kind of thing because in order for them to make that change, we would have to vote on it, if that makes sense. So they want to raise it to 66%, but they would need you to vote 60% to make it higher. So that's why it kind of messes them up every cycle when they try to introduce that. And I want people to be mindful of that, because at some point they're going to try and be tricky enough to get it on the ballot, and they're basically going to use the 60% threshold to up it to almost 67% in order to get a constitutional amendment passed. So be mindful if that ever appears on the ballot, but luckily hasn't shown up yet. Knock on wood.
That's wow. Like the
very
things
wow.
that they're doing. Yeah. My next question is
right, Janae? Straight chess. Huh? It's like chess.
Oh, it's definitely chess, and a little bit of to me like control too. My other question is, what are common concerns you've heard from your constituents or people in the community regarding this, and does the amendment address these? And Eric, we can start off with you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been, some of the things that we already kind of alluded to a little bit. It doesn't include home grow. I don't think it specifically says it definitely doesn't say you can't. Does it specifically say that you can? No, I think that there's, some negativity and even some ads that you've seen on that. You've seen some ads that, oh, it's going to create a monopoly. There's these limited licenses. There's already 22 licenses. For whatever reason, the state decided to make them all vertical, but they were to issue another 22, and they decide how many can exist, how many of each type of operation they can have, in what places, and how big they can be. So every year they can decide that. There was a sunset, they let sunset. So I continually believe that that's back on them if you're not happy with that. I think there's, concern that, maybe this will be more accessible to kids. I don't think any of us want more kids using this in the community. My thing is, right now it's pretty accessible to kids, sadly, because people that are selling it aren't asking for IDs. They're selling untested products, and we haven't seen an increase in youth use in the state. With the everyone's now going to be driving. There's not an exact test for that available. There's impairment tests for every type of substance out there. There's not an exact number for every pharmaceutical that exists, but there's drug recognition experts that are employed heavily by our state. And so I think a lot of those things can be alleviated. And if you just actually look at the data over time and actually use the tax money and resources towards any negatives, I think it actually can turn those things in a different way. But those are kind of, I think, the main four, which you've probably seen advertised or heard. But I'm happy to kind of hear or listen to any more.
Yeah.
What about decriminalization? Because that has come up, and especially as it affects, Black people, people of color, disenfranchised groups.
Is there a concern about
is there a concern about it? And does this if this is passed, does this allow the decriminalization of marijuana?
So, I mean, yeah, if this passes, the possession, I mean, Senator Bullard can, I guess, weigh in on this. The possession of marijuana would now not be a crime for those 21 and older. Now, what it does not speak to, and I want to make sure that we do something about, is for anyone who's had any kind of past charges or things like that, like what do we need to do on that side of things? The sad part, I think, on that is even the Restoration of Rights Amendment, has still had some issues in implementation. So I think I actually had some discussions at the event that we were both at the picnic there over at NOMI with them on some of the issues and the good things that they've had come of that. But I think that's one of the things that it does not do. But Senator Bullard, do you have any?
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on a couple different ways. So, of course, the amendment itself, a lot of people have asked the question, what does it mean around retroactivity? Meaning, like, do people get their, convictions expunged, or what happens there? The answer is no, unfortunately. For those folks who've been arrested for marijuana possession in the past or marijuana distribution in the past, this doesn't fix that, but it does start to create the framework to fix that. Without a recreational component in place, the state has no really foundation to start dealing with the issue around retroactivity. Speaking on the political side of the work that I do, we've already gotten commitments from members of the legislature to address that issue.
Wow.
Folks who've already talked about filing bills around removing the criminalization aspect for those who've already been impacted. But of course, the bill, the amendment needs to pass in order to create that foundational space. But as I alluded to earlier, one of the, I think, biggest things out there is this general vilifying of marijuana that harkens back to folks saying it's a gateway drug or it'll lead to higher levels of drug use. And I think the science is out there that really disproves that. But I would also argue with the opioid crisis that we're dealing with in the modern era, it's an opioid crisis driven by prescription drugs. So these are technically legal opioids that have created the problem of the opioid crisis. So these are prescriptions that are being prescribed to adults, to children, whether it is Adderall addiction, whether it is OxyContin or any of those more illicit opioids. That's been part of the bigger construct of the current drug crisis. Even when we're talking about fentanyl and the use of fentanyl, people are trying to say, well, they're sprinkling. Well, if we want to deal with the illegal marijuana concerns, then legalize. I mean, that's the easiest jump. If you want to deal with illegal marijuana distribution, then legalize marijuana to create a legal framework so people don't keep doing the same thing. So I just want to remind folks of that. And again, as I touched on earlier, part of the reason why this happened, 30-second history clip, William Randolph Hearst. For those, Google him. He was a newspaper tycoon who also owned lumber. And he saw hemp as a threat to paper. So when
Really?
you're a newspaper and you own wood, the only way you can stop your competitors is by doing away with the competition. And so he was the one who pushed Congress to make marijuana illegal because he saw it as competition to the wood business, to the wood and paper business, as opposed to it being, really problematic. And then on top of that, the way they were able to ramp up the illegality was by saying that it was these black jazz musicians and black swing artists that were out here smoking marijuana, and they're going to be a danger to your kids if you're not careful. And that's literally the hamster wheel we've been on for almost 100 years of, marijuana, making marijuana illegal in this country. Then they put it on the hippies in the 60s. And it's been always some sort of ethnic scapegoat in this. And so for us, I bring it full circle. The Amendment 3 thing now kind of negates that vilifying of Black and brown communities who bore the brunt of the war on drugs. And so I'm just excited about the opportunity, and I just don't want folks who look like me getting caught up in the, Ronald Reagan drugs are bad 1980s jargon to not really look at this for what it is. There's an opportunity to pave a new path forward for Black and brown communities. And so I'm looking forward to what this looks like after November 5th.
Yeah, and I'm hoping they'll stop filing charges, once this thing passes. I think we need to be cautious and make sure that they don't start creating new charges for public use consumption. But you need to understand, we are one of the largest. Oh yeah, we are one of the largest states in the country. We have the lowest felony threshold, unless something's changed somewhere else. We had that at 20 grams for the longest time, and there are tens of thousands of people being locked up that our tax dollars are paying to lock them up, house them, and even if they're not ending up spending time in prisons still, potentially, maybe they're let out, they have a criminal record. They need to then try and get reemployed. I mean, there's a lot of issues that come with that. So I would say that's the number one thing that is going to change when this passes.
That's going to be awesome. Janae, I want to go to a question that one of our audience members had. Can you guys go over some of the benefits to both the state and its residents of legalizing? So what are the benefits for the state and maybe making money? What's the benefits for the for the residents? And you already kind of touched on a few of those things already.
Yeah, so I'll jump in on this one. I mean, the additional revenue that other states have seen as a result of cannabis legalization have been through the roof. I mean, we're talking about in the first year, the state of Colorado saw almost $300 million in additional revenue, and they made it a specific point to send all that wholly to education. Like they wanted, they put that in their state statute, that any revenue derivative of cannabis legalization would go specifically to education. And I want to make sure that we understand the difference. They chose to do that through their legislature. They didn't do it through constitutional amendment. The constitutional amendment is very, very straightforward. It is up to the legislature now to say, where's that revenue going to go? And so I just want to remind people, this is where your power kicks in. This is where your power kicks in, is that the money's going to come in. The question is, where's it going to go? And so when we see schools closing, when we see roads that don't have potholes filled in it, when we see a housing affordability crisis, and you're about to bring in, and we're talking Colorado made $300 million. Colorado has a third of the population that Florida has, right?
Wow.
So we're talking could be in excess of $1 billion extra dollars in new revenue coming into the state from this thing, that sounds like fix our schools. That sounds like kids going to college for free.
And probably even more than that with tourism.
Right. A lot of different things. And so I just want to make sure people understand that we got to get on our legislators' heads about y'all about to get this money coming in. Don't do us like you did us with the lottery. And what I mean by that is they use the lottery as a Trojan horse. They said all that's going to education, which it does, but then they took the money out of education and sent it somewhere else. So now the lottery is filling in a gap that shouldn't have been there. It should have been money on top of what you are already spending. And that's what I want to make sure people understand the difference is if we got new revenue coming in from legal cannabis, don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining and be like, we're going to put this in this thing and then, pull the rug out from something else and create a budget deficit where there doesn't need to be one.
Wow. Eric, do you want to add to that as well, like some of the benefits to the state and its residents?
Yeah. I mean, briefly, I think he touched on all of it: infrastructure, education. It's really whatever they decide to put it towards. I mean, law enforcement's going to get a big chunk. They're going to put some towards safety, education. There's going to be a variety of things. Hopefully, they'll do some more research. But yes, I think the actual state study showed a minimum of like 150 to 500 million a year. And I was trying to look it up here to see what percentages they use to come up with that number, and I'll try and come up with that. But yeah, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest one. I mean, I think the police in your community are going to be focused on like patrolling your neighborhoods and actually looking for break-ins and crimes and other things instead of being tied up with the guy they had a smell in the ear just so they can get a misdemeanor on their record for the night. I mean, there's just like, I think there's you're not going to have as many armed people in your community selling contaminated product. Like, I think there's a variety of potential benefits in addition to the monetary side. But, clearly that is going to be a huge part. Will they let locals charge something additionally? Some places have, some haven't. Where will that all fall? Somewhat remains to be seen.
That's what's up, man. Thank you.
So my next question is, what lessons can Florida learn from other states that have already legalized recreational cannabis? And I know you guys touched on that a little bit, but what are some other best practices or things that you saw in other states that have already done this?
Well,
Eric,
listen. Sorry about
that.
that.
No, go for it. No, I'll close.
Only because I've visited a number of states who already made this move, and it's been a boom for them. And these are non-tourist states in many cases. But I'll just use the New Jersey, New York example. When the state of New Jersey legalized marijuana before New York State did, what you saw was all that additional tourist revenue of New Yorkers commuting into New Jersey to do what they need to do. And so New York State, the very next year, was like, okay, I see what you did there. So let's make it happen. So you can only imagine for the global South, states like Georgia are gonna have to jump on board. States like Alabama, Mississippi gonna have to jump on board because you're gonna have folks, it's gonna be easy drive for somebody in Alabama to pull up in Pensacola and do what they need to do. And it's like, eventually it's like, wait, we're losing potential revenue. And so 37 states out of 50 have already legalized marijuana in some way, shape, or form. So it's not like this is some sort of new trend. I think it's all time for all 50 states to do it. And then shout out to another podcast, All the Smoke. Nevertheless, they just interviewed VP Harris, who said very plainly, we're past this as we should be past this as a federal government. We should have already legalized marijuana. I'm sorry, she used weed. She already legalized weed in this country. So,
Eric,
Yeah, listen, I think the federal government could change something, and the states are still going to have to decide what that looks like. There's still dry counties and places, mostly in the South. And to the other point, and kind of relates to our earlier point, those states that don't have it don't have constitutional amendment processes. They don't even, they actually have made it so you cannot put anything on and not vote for it. Versus here, they've like kind of made it so you think you can, and made it really, really hard so only certain people can, and then everybody gets to vote. But I mean, you cannot in most of those places. So I think the reverberation of what that will look like, because they have very, very old laws on this issue, will be a huge benefit. I think lessons learned, you know, I think if you don't want people consuming in public and around others, and you want a smart thing, maybe there's some fines if they do, but have consumption areas, have safe places for them to go and do things, and that's it. Like there's solutions. It's not just like constant negativity all the issue. For the most part, it's going to do all great things. You know, I think the negatives that we may see hopefully can be offset with the revenue aspects, and we can get anybody who has any issues whatever help they may need with anything, not just with anything as it relates to this.
That's awesome. You know, the crazy part, Janae, I saw something came out the other day where, you know, we're so far behind, but California, they're about to do Amsterdam style cafes.
Really?
In California, yeah, where you can actually go and like to like a coffee shop and sit and smoke and, you know, and take it all in. So, I mean, we're behind California, you know, for sure. But
that sounds so California.
Just to even Eric's point, even about places to do safe consumption and stuff like that, they're looking at things like that, you know, moving forward.
That's what's up. Do you want me to go to the next question, PK, or do you have something?
Yeah, you running the gambit.
Okay. So my next question is there bipartisan support for Amendment 3, or do you all see a divide among the parties?
Well, I, as the political guy, I'll go ahead. Yeah, the short answer is yes. You know, both nationally and here in the state. I mean, for those who've seen I think the first Yes on 3 commercial was Senator Jones and Senator Gruters out of Northern Florida. If anyone knows Senator Gruters, he actually used to be the chair of the Republican Party of Florida. So We're talking about somebody who's clearly two different political spectrums, basically both talking about why Amendment 3 is a good thing for the state. But also, you know, I don't want to make it feel like it's pie in the sky. And I don't know if we're going to touch on this later on. In terms of minority access to business opportunities for this, we haven't gotten there, and we need to get there quick, because right now it's almost like a monopoly, if you will, on who kind of controls the legal market here in the state. And it's a lot of people who do not look like me. But I will, you know, at the same of the amendment and the need to do it to get us moving in the right direction. But on the bipartisanship question, the answer is yes, primarily because you have a lot of growers, again, who have supported the Republican Party of Florida, who see this as economic benefit, economic opportunity to their pockets. You know, for other folks on the liberal side, it is the taking and ending this kind of war on drugs, vilifying of it, and kind of meshing those two worlds together right now. And so that's what is creating the bipartisanship. One of the funniest things is one of the biggest lobbyists for marijuana legalization nationally is former Speaker of the House John Boehner. He is literally one of
Really?
the largest marijuana lobbyists in the country right now. You know, and another important marijuana lobbyist, at least that was her former job, is the current chair of the Florida Democratic Party. That is what she did in her past.
Wow.
So this has always had a bipartisan sway to it.
Yeah, I would just second that. I think generally it's been a very partisan issue. I think the governor somewhat, I mean, he had the party come out for the GOP against this amendment and others pretty early on. But that hasn't happened on the Democratic side. They're in favor. The young Republicans in Florida have come out in favor. There's been a lot of individuals who, you know, if they don't feel there's a threat to doing so later, have been willing to. But, you know, I mean, even, you know, Donald Trump's posted twice about Amendment 3 as a Florida voter recently. So it definitely crosses both sides as it relates to this specific issue, the who and how. But I'd also second your point. I mean, we definitely need to figure that out. I mean, there's a variety of issues, even with getting these Pigford licenses issued. They need to figure out something else for some expansion, even if it's making some smaller craft license out. Like, what are the different things to get something going? Because the other thing I think, to lessons learned from other states, is if they try and mix too much into that, then things get challenged and no one's able to participate for however long, and that continues on. So I think that needs to be thought about too, as you create this perfect realm of whatever you think that may be, like what's going to actually be able to get moving with the rulemaking and everything else that may come into play with that.
I think I want to piggyback on something Dwight said. You know, and this is probably my personal feelings. I feel that, you know, back to the minority stake, being one of the stakeholders in, or being able to have the license, because I think correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, it's seed to sale, right? Is what they call it.
Yeah.
Can you explain what seed to sale means real quick, just so I'm not
essentially it's basically vertical integration, where you need to be growing, processing, and hosting, having all of your retail stores, doing all the delivery yourselves.
Everything in-house, pretty much.
Everything in-house, statewide. Can't sell anything from anyone else. Can't wholesale anything to anyone else right now. Can't even just do one separate part of it if that was what your skill set required. So,
Right.
and we've seen a variety of other things. We've even seen forced other ways of that in other industries. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see where and what this all plays out with, but they definitely need to address that. My fear is in some other places, when they tried to address it, it then has led to litigation that goes on, and then those people are still not able to participate. And that's part of what happened, I think, the first time, where they tried to give licenses to these Pigford minority farmer applicants, and that's still been you know, a process. So I agree, but the how is what needs to be done correctly.
So that's where I'm a little caught up, right? Because I almost feel, and only because we've seen this before, right? And, you know, where you get Black people to support something in hopes that they're going to do right by us, and it just doesn't happen, right? So sometimes, unfortunately, although I'm yes on 3 clearly, right? Sometimes I don't know what point, and maybe Dwight, you could help me with this. At what point do we make a stand, whether it hurts it blows the whole shit up if they don't do right by us? Because too many times we're invited to the dinner, but we don't have a seat at the table. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think I feel you on this one. I think the thing that makes this a little bit different for me is this is direct ownership and agency from a voter standpoint. Like, when you vote a yes on this, there is a particular outcome. So yes on 3 creates now legal possession. So if you are a weed smoker in the world who's been worried about who's going to see you, am I going to get busted, what's going to happen, after this passes and after it's implemented, you now have a pathway for legal possession, regardless of color, right? Now, the ownership aspect of it, the monetary business aspect of it is absolutely important. And the reason I say that in that way is that you're absolutely right. If this was a state legislative move, like if this was the Speaker of the House coming down and being like, we're trying to do this bill and it's good for Black people, and I need y'all to come up to Tallahassee and lobby for the greatness of this bill. The bill passes, and then all of a sudden Black people get shut out. That's a legitimate gripe, because now you recruited me, you came up here, you made promises, and you never delivered. On a constitutional amendment, that for me is the difference. It is voter to voter. Like if 60% of the voters say yes, and this thing happens, we're off to the races in terms of what it says.
So I would challenge you to this. So then what do you believe should be the next step? So say we get this done. Yes, on 3. Yay, we all happy. We can walk around, go to Saturday at downtown Fort Lauderdale, and you know what I'm saying?
Do the thing. What I would say is what we talked about is like things like getting people's things expunged. Like that should be the demand, right? Like, and it shouldn't be like a quid pro quo. Like I'm only going to do this if it is. We know the benefits of it to people of color, and just in terms of like what this looks like. That, just to give an example, I remember Jim DeFeeti did a report on one apartment complex in the Goulds area of South Dade, where there were almost 400 arrests made of Black people for the possession and smoking of marijuana, which meant that Miami-Dade police were literally just going to harass this one apartment complex over and over and over again because they could.
Right.
So for me, when I think about it in that context, that means that dude sitting on the steps no longer has to worry about that part. You understand what I'm saying? Like when the police roll up, like that means that the police intentionally targeted one apartment complex to create chaos in the life of Black people. And so when I think about that story and this amendment, that starts to clear it up. But to your point, what should be the demand? What should we be asking for? Is it stake in ownership? Is it access to business? Is it those things? Absolutely. I agree 1,000%. But I also don't think we need middle management. And that's the problem, is that a lot of times let's say you want that, someone will come along who looks like you, PK, and be like, well, let's not ask for that. Let's ask for 15% instead of the 400, because we've never had 15%, and that's all we need. And that I can't tolerate. That is what I'm talking about. We need to shut it down. Like, it's like, we got this thing now, so don't ask me to wait anymore. Give me the thing that I need. Expunge the records of these folks. You know, as Nas said, open every cell in Attica, send them to Africa. You know, that kind of stuff, right? Like, let's
great quote.
let's hook it up, right? Because now you got no reason not to, because you just in one fell swoop legalized possession of marijuana for 21-year-olds. So how many people over 21 are sitting there with a possession, thing sitting over their heads? That is the thing. Let's make that demand and say,
yeah, I mean, I would talk to your legislators that are, looking to get voted for, that are currently in, and talk to them about what they expect and what they want to see. What do they have for ideas on ways to fix this and implementation too? Because, it's going to come down to them. And if you remember, actually, prior to our amendment, how it originally started was the only way you could even apply was you needed to have a nursery that was in the state for over 30 years, and they only picked one regionally. So if that's what comes next, that's not okay, right? So like those discussions of what needs to happen for the implementation need to be happening with those legislators both now and after in the election, because in the 6 months after that, all those discussions on the tax, the license, the criminality, etc., those are all just macro and micro issues, like all happening within one. And if there's not somebody focused on some of those things, they can fall through the cracks or not necessarily be prioritized, or you're not going to have everybody steadfast feeling the same way about the issue. I think there's been a lot of these hemp businesses that have popped up that are been more of a small business type. They found some of these these farm bill rules and gray areas, and I think they're very much against this too, and have been operating against it. Even the new head of the Republican Party actually was a hemp lobbyist for the past couple of years. So that's sort of interesting. I think there will be a better discussion on how does this expand and what does that look like, and how do we get more people involved in general of all different types, right? And maybe not having to do any and everything. I mean, the fact that with the system, we don't even have a way right now for you to be able to get a delivery same day from these people. I mean, there's just a variety of functionality issues that just still don't function within this and need to be corrected. So I think we should look to the good examples that we actually have seen function. If you know anybody who's participating in a state that has done this right and is licensed, I would definitely talk with them more. I'm happy to connect you to some that I know and see what their thoughts are here too. But they are somewhat different, as the senator alluded to, but equally important on each of them. So,
Eric, if this passes, how soon or when would it go into effect?
So the effective date's January. It says in the amendment they're supposed to create the rules within 6 months. Seemingly as soon as the legislature would create an implementing bill. There's been some arguments it could go sooner. There's been some arguments if they don't do it sooner, with legal challenges, it could take longer than that. Ours had language about you had to create a license structure and issue licenses within 6 to 9 months. They took longer than that, and they had already set up this low THC structure. So we'll see, but I think it's going to be sooner than that. Them knowing that there's tax revenue out there, and the entities that are here. I don't think there's been any other state where the people who had a state license didn't have it again then after. So they're going to want to continue to function and be able to make sure there's enough to supply not only the people that are here, but we are a massive tourist state compared to any of these other states. I mean, people come here to visit just to visit for a variety of other reasons and then do this. Maybe they were going to Colorado and other places for this being one of the main reasons. So I think it's going to have a huge positive impact, and hopefully any of the negatives we're able to work on.
That's what's up. I want to just go over a few things for people who, have not gotten their medical card. I may not understand. I've gone through the process a little bit, so I just wanted to be a little bit insightful from that and just see, if you gentlemen or even Janae want to add to it. So the process is fairly simple. You can literally get it done in a day. You make an appointment with a doctor, pretty much analyzes you, whether you suffer from PTSD, right, or anxiety, whether you've had injuries. These are the questions that they ask. And after that, they draw an assessment, and you have to file with the state. When I got mine, I forgot that I had actually done it many years ago. So I was already on file, but I thought I didn't follow through with it. So it was extremely quick and easy for me. At that point, you could connect with any one of the dispensaries, and, they're like, going into an Apple store, you know what I'm saying, where they'll break down the different variations of cannabis related products that they sell. And when I tell you variations, Janae, if you're not fully into this, there's so many. So there's topical, where if you have pain, back pain and stuff like that, you rub it on like lotion. There's the gummies that most people know about. There's flour that most people know about. There's also the pens and different, you know, types of the different pens. I'm a supernatural person. I try to, you know, reserve my throat. So I vaporize, and I use, you know, certain ones that are, considered cleaner. So if you're going to judge it kind of like gas, super unleaded is the direction I go into. But, you know, but I wanted to just kind of speak on that. So just people who may not have the knowledge of how, you know, having a cannabis or a medical card to be able to buy cannabis works and what the process is like. And I want from there to kind of give you gentlemen an opportunity to talk about the benefits, right? You know, just any kind of knowledge you may have on just the physical and mental benefits of cannabis. I know my parents are probably watching this podcast right now, and, you know, they're coming from an era where, again, we talked about the hippies and, you know, the gateway drug and all these different things. But, you know, recently having a conversation with my mom and trying to get her on the 50-50, you know, like, hey, mom, you know, like, so what the 50-50 is that it's 50% CBD, 50% THC. Now, I am no scientist, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just giving you a little bit of information that I have. Maybe Eric can go into it more.
You know a lot.
You know what I'm saying? But pretty much CBD and THC works together. So CBD is considered the relaxing part of it, and THC is more of the what's the word I'm looking for?
Brain functionality.
Yes. Yeah, there's a word though. Psycho, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I don't like that word, but
all right, sorry, it's not the word. You know the word. It's
So
a
it's
word
the part
for
that
it.
gets you high. You mean?
I'm not
Yeah,
gonna
but
say
there's a
the
word
word.
for it. There's a word for it. I just can't think of it. Hallucinogenic. You know,
Hallucinogenic. But
hallucinogenic. There you go. That's a better word.
I believe that it heightens your different emotions and senses. I definitely do not
Absolutely.
like the word hallucinogenic. I hate the word psychoactive, because all that psychoactive means is brain activity. It doesn't mean that anyone's losing their mind.
Right.
But yeah, I think that there may be more stimulation going on.
I like heighten of emotions, or I like that.
Most consumers tend to have much higher THC than CBD, right? So they do make products where they're 50-50, where you don't get as heightened, but you get more relaxed. So I'm trying to put my mom onto that. She's getting there slowly. I might get a pill or something that is a lot easier for it. They even got drops you could put under your tongue. There's so many different ways to consume this. So if you're not, you know, I know my boy K-Lox is in here, Commercial King. So if you don't want to butt a spliff and have it in your mouth, you know, you don't have to do it that way. There's many ways to consume and be able to have it and go to work and function and stuff like that. So I just wanted to inform my audience who just have no idea or maybe stuck on old school mentality, just some of the benefits. And gentlemen, if you could please, you know.
Yeah, I would add to that, PK, that as I mentioned at the beginning, my mom was trying to pass legislation. May she rest in peace. She spent last few years of her life in chronic pain. And this before medicinal marijuana came online. But I remember one of the things she shared with me prior to her passing was that, you know, as someone, you know, a child of the 60s, 70s, she had her time of usage, and she wished that there was a world in which she could have fought the pain that she felt with marijuana, you know, but because, she was an elected official, all the things that sort of come with that in a world that did not allow that, prevented her from really probably expanding her life, if I'm going to be honest, by not having access to that. So I think it's important for people to understand that there is a deliberate science around the pain relief, the extension of life. It has been used for years now federally with cancer patients. So even before Florida had it, they were already dealing with issues around people who were being treated for cancer, having access to the federal process of medicinal marijuana. So there's a lot of good information out there that exists on the medicinal use, what it's good for. And really, again, a lot of us has been caught up in the misinformation, disinformation hamster wheel for forever, right? I mean, we all grew up with the say no and the dares and they would put marijuana in the same bucket as cocaine and crack, and like these are all the bad things in the world. But the reality is marijuana, as again, the utilization of smokable, paste-driven marijuana, topical cannabis, that goes back 30,000 years. Our indigenous brothers and sisters have been experimenting with peyote, cannabis, all kinds of, and I know Eric hates the term, hallucinogenics. but the reality is we've been using that for all kinds of things, mushrooms, you name it, for years, around dealing with these things that we didn't have the language for before. So people people act like anxiety showed up, post-COVID.
Right.
People have had anxiety for decades, right? Like people have had social anxiety for forever, but no one knew the terminology for it. But there have always been methodologies to deal with it. I visited Southern Africa back in 2017, and they were talking about indigenous practices there, and they were like, "Yeah, we've been moshing it up for." Really? And they were like, "We've been moshing it for 30,000 years as a continuum of drinkable." Like they would actually mash up the leaf, turn it into basically a beer, and basically, depending on the fermentation process, you could use it for ailments, you could use it for elixirs, and, shout out to Amendment 4, people would actually use it for abortions.
Really?
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
So this go back.
Right. Wow.
Weed encyclopedia, Senator Bullard.
Yeah, I mean, I've mostly from studying this and seeing, number one, how long it's been used medicinally until the 30s, as he alluded to earlier. But actually, and I did Kathy Jordan, who was named in your mom's bill. She suffered from ALS for over 30 years, and it was the only thing she was using. She was getting around the Capitol. She was moving herself around. Hearing stories of John Morgan's father and even his brother Tim, who passed this past year, who was in a wheelchair his whole life, and whether it had curative properties or whether it was just helping someone dealing with cancer and chemotherapy be able to like keep a meal down or eat. There's a variety of levels. I think we've only begun to start to study this. Its Schedule 1 status has not really allowed its beneficial studies. And actually, the University of Florida and some others have started to do some pretty great work on some of these issues.
FAMU as well.
Yep. Actually, a variety of the universities. But a lot of them have been kind of all collecting that data within FAM and UF and moving forward every year and kind of building on that. And so I think that's been something that we've seen in this state much different than any others that didn't really have their universities do much of anything as it relates. So I think that is one good thing. The second thing I would say is our medical system, I think, is going to be more important than ever once this passes. So everyone think, oh, I'm not going to need to go to my doctor, blah, blah, blah. Well, what are you going to be paying in taxes? Have you done the calculation for what you think you would spend and what that looks like based on the rate of somewhere else? That's assuming that the legislature doesn't put into process a limit on what percentage product you can buy. How much are they going to let you buy every day? What products are going to be allowed? I mean, our amendment, we had to fight for 3 years just to get flour to be able to be sold, even though it was mentioned in the amendment. We need to take them to court on that. So, I mean, there are a variety of levels of things that still need to occur. But I think there are huge medical benefits. We wouldn't have the million people we have in the state using and all the stories, but we've got to delve into that further. But in the interim, we just got to stop arresting people. It's just absurd.
Yes, indeed. My co-host has disappeared, but I'm sure she'll be back real soon. Definitely want to acknowledge everybody in the room who's being enlightened. This is what it's all about. Welcome to That Part Podcast 305. This is our special edition all about Amendment 3 and legalization of recreational weed. We have Senator Dwight Bullard from Florida Rising, and we have Eric Stevens from Florida for Care, and Yes on 3 weighing in. You gentlemen have been amazing thus far. I'm just going to keep the question going, see if I get my co-host back. But
she said she lost the internet. She
lost the internet. Okay, got you. I'm in the comment section, and she's reconnecting. Okay, cool. Yay!
Welcome back.
Welcome back, JT.
Look, my internet is betraying me tonight, so my apologies, y'all.
Nah, it's all good. I was holding it down. You can go to our next question.
I mean, I honestly, a lot of the questions that we had, Eric and Senator Bullard kind of just really answered it just conversationally and different things. So,
good. So I can go smoke now?
Yeah, you can go smoke now. I would say before I let you guys go, I want to know from you, do you have any data, any polling around, the chances of this passing? Like, what are the streets saying in your world about this actually becoming, law?
I mean, it's been polling mid 60s most of the time. I don't think there's been a ton of dips one way or the other. You might see one a little lower, one a little higher, but typically they're not polling actual expected voters. They're just kind of putting it out there to adults or putting it out there. There's a variety of sometimes factors that aren't looked at, and if they're not, it can kind of throw those off. But we'll see it move. I mean, there's a good amount of TV that's already been going on this, which isn't, as usual this early. And we'll see kind of as it moves, but I haven't seen a ton of movement one way or the other. So, we've got to get 60+1. Now, that being said, everybody's got to expect that it's going to be close, and it's not going to, because there's only been 3 states that have passed with over 60 for adult use.
Wow.
So, Arizona was like 60.01, I think. And I think if you look at the voter makeup there, it's, got a lot of similarities. So, remains to be seen. I mean, there's a lot of things going on right now. The governor's going against this. I saw an ad earlier that was about safety in the streets that was put on by the National Department of Transportation and FDOT and others. And it wasn't about the campaign, but it very much made it seem like it was. And
so, yeah, I just want to touch on that because Eric, I'm glad you brought that up. Governor, what's his name, in here in the state of Florida, has basically been using state resources to create a false narrative around a lot of things, but in particular case, cannabis. And what do I mean by that is, you're the governor of the state. So let's say you can talk to the person over the DMV. So now I can put up, an informational in the DMV around marijuana use when you go get your driver's license, or
Wow.
I control the Department of Education. So now I can put, make sure this memo goes out to the different schools around the illicit use of those kinds of things. And so people have to be very, very mindful of who's controlling the narrative, what is it they're trying to do. And we know that this particular governor has been super political in terms of his use of that, using millions and millions of our taxpayer dollars to file frivolous lawsuits, using police forces to go after people who've signed petitions. Like, this is the thing that happens there. So I just want people to not get caught up in the nonsense of someone sending something home with your kids that reads like a information document that speaks to something that conveniently is coming up in 30 plus days on the ballot. Because again, just to bring it full circle, this amendment deals with adult use, 21 years and older use of recreational cannabis.
Yeah.
This isn't about, fruit flavored this or that that's going to your 13-year-old kid. This isn't about all the this is about 21-year-olds being able to possess and use recreational cannabis.
That's what's up. Listen, man, gentlemen, you have been great on this topic. We're so fortunate and appreciative of you both to take the time to do this, right, Janae?
Yes, so grateful. Like you guys were a class on just, and clearly you guys are yes on 3. So you guys gave a lot of people the information on why they should vote yes.
And thank you for also allowing us to have the opportunity to push back on some things for those people who are not completely sold on it. We wanted to push back deliberately on those, and then also just to give people a little bit of insight. I see Mama Tate, she's like, I'm not into that, but she's appreciating the information, and some of it is very educational. I've learned so much tonight.
Yeah.
About this, things surrounding this that I didn't know, prior. So this is why we do this,
Thank you to y'all for having us and hosting us and knowing how important this issue is, and even just in general, making sure people understand voting and how to register and when the dates are and where you got to go to do it and what the options are. Because I've been doing this a long time and it still doesn't make sense, especially locally. So
yeah, definitely. Big shout out to the fact that folks, you got 5 days to register. Just FYI.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You got 5 days to register. So if this is the only issue you're concerned about and you need to go in that booth and vote for it, you got 5 days to update your address, register, or update your signature.
That's what's up. All right. Well, we're gonna let y'all enjoy the rest of y'all evening, and thank you so much. We want everybody to stick around. We got the aftermath coming up next, where we talk shit behind y'all back. I'm kidding. You guys are great.
But you're serious. Okay?
We're just gonna wrap up the show. But thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Peace.
of course.
All right. Take care. Wow.
That was good.
Real good. I'm so happy we did this. We flowing, JT. We've been doing all live shows so far.
Yeah.
I think this season is just all live, right?
I mean, we may have one pre-recorded that I know of coming up. We actually, I don't know, can we preview it a little bit? Because I kind of want to tell.
Yeah. Let's preview with the aftermath. I think we covered everything with Amendment 3, so we can kind of move on to what we're doing next.
No, we want it because we say we're a nonpartisan show, so we actually have someone who is a Black Republican who has a national platform, and I've seen him on different news outlets. So we wanted to be able to talk to a different perspective of someone on the political spectrum and see, why they vote Republican, why they support Trump, and just, have a balanced conversation and bring that a different energy to the show. We want you guys to know, like, we literally are nonpartisan, and I would love to talk to somebody from the Green Party from my mouth to God years, and people watching, like, I would love. I saw that interview on the Breakfast Club on your station, 103.5 The Beat, iHeart, and it was a really, really great interview. So for us, we're trying to make sure we bring variety, bring information. Like today was a class in weed, and I loved it. Like it was good. Like why, the history behind it. And so we're trying to do more of that type of work. So definitely be on the lookout. And I think Commercial Kings may like our Black Republican conversation.
Yeah, he'll be back for that. I'm excited about it. And big up to Tontis, your fiance for helping us out. And listen, man, we got so many people that are supporting us in so many different ways, not just by showing up in the chat room and following us and spreading the word, but also helping to get us guests. So my boy Rudy from Champs Sports also gave me another recommendation of somebody that could be good for the show. So we really appreciate it. We got some things coming for you this season, man. But we definitely appreciate your support. We'll appreciate it a little bit more if we can definitely get some donations for Just Vote Period. So it's very simple. All you have to go to justvoteperiod.com, and there is a donation button. $5 recurrent, $10, $20, any little bit helps. As you guys know, from the last one to this one, we fund this on our own. We believe it's important. We believe in what we do, but we do need some help. We definitely need some help. So if you can find it in your heart to go to justvoteperiod.com and hit that donation, or scroll all the way to the bottom of the website, and you can make a donation there that will help this podcast and many other things that we do to get people to come out and vote and get people excited about democracy.
No, that part, guys. And two, if you're an advertiser and you want to be featured alongside our amazing content, you could have a commercial or a live read right here live within our show. So just know that those opportunities are available. If you want to know more information, you could definitely reach out to myself or Papa Keith, and we would get you hooked up.
Yep.
So that we can, advertise your business.
Toss your logo up there, you know what I'm saying? Like let's do one right now. Listen, if you want to know what's going on in your community here in South Florida, right? If you want to know what's happening, if you want things broken down for you in a way that you could understand and appreciate it, you don't have to feel embarrassed or ashamed. If you don't understand big words and all these policies and you want somebody to break it down for you, that is what High-Low News does. Hyper-local news. Please subscribe to High-Low News. They will break down the information for you. I swear on everything. Oh, God. All right. I go to High-Low News to get my information because it really just breaks it down in a way that is so unique, so amazing. Okay, girl. Yes. Is that our producer? Yes. Yes. She was like, oh, yes. Ready. Shout out to Derica. But High-Low News, as you can see it right there, breaking down things in a way we could truly digest it on the topic we were talking about today. So please, shout out to Munch. So please subscribe. I don't want to take all of the shine. Janae, please let them know how they can connect with High-Low News and subscribe and all that good stuff.
No, definitely. See how you're such a pro. You just went right into your live read right there. I love it. Guys, you can follow me at Janae Tate on social media, all platforms, but it'll be more special to me if you follow High-Low News on all platforms. We are everywhere: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, I said TikTok, all the things, every social media site, we're there. And
but how do you get that newsletter?
Oh, sign up for our email newsletter. Look at you knowing about my stuff more than I do. You can sign up for our email newsletter on the website that you just saw me have up at highlowNewsMiami.com. We have exclusive content there for our loyal followers. And as you saw, that was an article, an exclusive report that we did on the benefits how Amendment 3, if passed, will affect the Black community, both economically and criminal justice wise. And so actually Senator Dwight Bullard was a part of that that article that we did. And so we talked to people and got their take on it, the pros and the cons. So if you guys want more information and kind of more of an in-depth analysis of what that means for us, and we saw a lot of people in the comments, asking about that, I'll actually drop that into the chat for you all, the link to the article, just so you could check it out. But that's more of like the work that I do with Hilo News goes hand in hand with Just Vote Period and That Part podcast. And also too, on Hilo News, we always post our That Part podcast episodes as articles there as well for people to consume it. So yeah, thank you, PK, for that live read. And if you want to be an advertiser, you have the professional, the nationally syndicated, award-winning radio host doing your live reads. Like you, and I'm sure it's cheaper than going to iHeart. So.
A lot cheaper. You didn't hear that, Shari, but we got you.
You can do both. You can do both. See,
exactly. Exactly. We had a wonderful time with you tonight. Thank you so much. We appreciate everybody in the chat rooms, your loyalty, your love. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, it was a good show. Learned a lot about Senator Dwight Bullard is always a wealth of information. The way he broke down like the historical, I didn't know that about Hearst. And I'm like, Hearst, I know them as the media company. So I'm like, oh, this is where
Bob Marley and Little Richard should be kicking his ass in heaven right now. That was great information.
Fighting in the heaven in the skies.
Thank you to Eric as well. I met him actually at Nomi Village.
You just met him?
Yeah, I just met him. He plugs those signs, a lot of those Yes 3 signs, and he was there to engage with our audience, and that's when we connected. So, it was good to connect with them. Thank you, Sassy. We appreciate everyone in the chat room. Thank you. Y'all have a good night.
Yeah, put some trees in the chat if you enjoyed tonight's conversation. Thank you, guys.
Peace.
Good night, y'all.